We'll start when the issue first arose, whenever that was, whether we're talking about libel or invasion of privacy or the Occupy movement and so on. We'll start with the first public airing of the issue and then work it up to now, to date. And as you've already gotten the hint, the content is inevitably legal. Can't help that. It's the court that's making the decision. The First Amendment means what the Supreme Court says it means. And to understand the First Amendment, to understand freedom of speech and press, you have to understand what the court has done. And I have put in the reader a number of decisions. I think it's split about evenly between summaries of decisions, which make it easy for you, and the court's decisions themselves, which I've edited to get rid of a lot of the legal stuff, footnotes and complicated legal asides and so on, and tried to just leave you with the guts of the decision. But I think it's real important that you look at the court's words themselves. Get into what the court is saying, not filtered by me or by some writer, some textbook writer or somebody online, but look at what the court is doing. You've got to understand how these people think, what their logic is, what animates them to come out in one First Amendment way rather than another. And you know, some students don't like that, and they want to be spoon-fed what the court has decided, what this academic thinks is important about that. I'd rather treat you as grown-ups and have you understand it firsthand, get it from the horse's mouth. I think there ought to be enough seats here, barely, for everyone to sit down. I hate to see you guys having to sit down. There are a few seats, but we'll see how it goes. They moved me to this room at the last minute, and it's okay. The view from here is not terribly attractive. Grading, I put in the syllabus, we're going to have a midterm, a paper. You get credit for useful in-class contributions to discussion and online B-space contributions to discussion, and a final. And there's no curve. Everybody get an A or a C or worse. I certainly hope that you all get A's. Laptops and cell phones. Cell phones is sort of easy. I mean, obviously, I don't want to hear a cell phone ring, and I don't want you to be distracted by your cell phone in any way. So the rule is, if you have a cell phone, I'd be shocked if anybody doesn't, you have a cell phone, turn it off, stick it in your backpack or someplace out of sight and out of reach. No texting. Really distracting. Laptops, similarly. I'm convinced that laptops are a distraction for both you and for me. You know, I see somebody laughing at their laptop, and I know that whatever I said is not hilarious. And it's distracting for the people behind, and even if you're in the last row, I don't want anybody to use a laptop. However, I understand that some of you are so wedded to it, it's an extension of your arm, that you need it for note-taking purposes. And if that's so, if you really need it, you can use it, but you will have to sign a contract with me that explains why you need it, and that solemnly promises that you will use it only for your personal note-taking, that you will, on my request, print out a copy of your notes from any given class, that you won't use it for any other purpose, including Facebook, or email, or surfing the net, or working on any other courses, and if you violate the contract, no more laptop. So if you really insist on using a laptop, see me, I'll give you the contract for you to consider and sign. Questions about any of this so far? No? Really? Okay. Let me find out about you. I assume that since this is in the media studies major, that most of you are media studies majors. How many are you media studies majors? Ooh. Okay. How many aren't? Let's find out what you are. Math? Interesting. Oh, yeah, wow. Poli-sci? Yeah, okay. How's that different from poli-sci and... what? Well, but I mean, if you graduate from Cal with those two, the major and the minor, what do you know that's different from the poli-sci?
Well, the political
Yeah, it's a little subtle for me. Who else? Other non-media? Legal? Legal studies, there must be some. Others? Not many, huh? Good. Not you? No? Who else? I want something exotic here. Way back. What kind? Middle Eastern studies. All right. Yeah. What is it? Uh-huh. Is Rita Moran in that? Is she teaching that? Huh? I thought she was the dean of that subject. Who else? Any other strays? Yeah. Public policy? That's an undergraduate. Uh-huh. Oh. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. American studies? That's it? No science people? None. How about international students? Anybody from some other country besides this one? Yes. Germany? Where?
Like 2 hours away from Frankfurt.
Uh-huh.
And I study Berlin. Most people know that. So.
Uh-huh. You sound like one of us. But you may be mystified by our legal system, which is quite different from your... Who else? From China? Mainland China. Really, where? Uh-huh, I've heard of it. Somebody else? That's it? Canada, where? Calgary? I have a sort of a friend who plays for the Flames. And he's a better player than his colleagues. Yeah, at least Stempniak is his name. Anybody else from somewhere else? Yeah. Hong Kong? Macau, really? Oh. You ever go to a casino? Do they let people under 21 into the casino? 18 you can get in? Huh. That's it? Yeah. Taiwan? Uh-huh. Okay, well, that enriched the discussion some. Are there any military veterans? Yeah. Did you serve in Iraq or Afghanistan? Yeah. Any other vets? Thank you. Anyway. How many of you are on Facebook? Okay, they put it the other way. How many of you are not on Facebook? Three? Yeah, but I don't know my way around. Who asked me that? I don't know my way around at all. Somebody did for me a Facebook page for the book, which nobody has ever looked at as far as I can tell. Okay. We'll have more to say about Facebook in a while. Let me find out about where you get your news, about what's happening in the world. What is your primary source of news? Think about it for a second. Where do you get your news? Here are the initial options. From reading a newspaper, a real newspaper, on paper, reading a newspaper. How many of you get your news primarily from a newspaper? 2. How many get your news primarily from television? 3, 4, 5. How about radio? 3. Magazines? On paper. The internet. Okay. Any other source besides those? Somebody get information from somewhere other than those? Okay. If it's the internet, then where do you get your information from? A newspaper site? Mostly, huh? As opposed to, say, CNN? No? Online? Or a blog? Or blogs? No? YouTube? No? That's surprising. For those handful of you who get your news mainly from television, where do you get it from? Is it CNN, MSNBC, or one of the networks? Daily Show? That's always baffled me. You know, I think in order for the Daily Show to be funny, you have to know what the news is. So you already have to know. How can you get your news from the Daily Show? Is that where you get it? What? And Colbert? Yeah, back to back. Well, Colbert's, he's part of the news these days. So who hasn't raised their hand about where you get news from? Okay, so we got everybody covered. Okay, the course is about freedom of speech primarily and the press. Why do we protect free speech? Why do we care whether free speech is protected? Yeah.
Well, it's something that's been more or less grandfathered in from when we were colonies, and we're not like having a tyrant telling us what we could not say. So we decided we were going to say anything we want.
Anything we want?
Within reason, yes.
We can say anything we want within reason. Why is that good?
I think that means you can have a check on government, have a check on big business. You can have a voice, and you can make sure you can say what you want to say without the fear of being thrown in jail, the fear of being exiled, or what have you.
How is being able to speak freely a check on big business or on government?
Well, if you're scared of government, if you're scared to say, our government's doing this wrong, where they're throwing people in jail for being dead, whatever it is. If you're afraid to say it, because you might get thrown in jail, what do we quiet, the government keep doing what they do. If you can say what you want, what do we investigate it, and more people can rise up or come together to stop it or whatever.
So you want to, through speech, mobilize the people to stop government abuse, stop corporate abuse.
We're on the other side, you actually have to do something instead of doing nothing, something else.
Why else could we protect free speech? It sounds like fun, but why is it important to society? Have a nice pre-exchange of ideas. What's difference does it make? Sam?
The belief is that the free market ideas, you can have the best ideas about, discuss them, and then they can be consensus. That's a great idea.
As opposed to a situation where the government decides what ideas are acceptable and can be put out there. Yeah, so you're more likely to arrive at the truth.
I don't know, if you forgot to pull people together, they agree on the truth.
On the other hand, if you have the government deciding what is true, that sounds dangerous. Yeah. How does free speech promote fairness?
Recently, there's a thing where drugs that are promoted by doctors, not getting paid from certain legal drugs, that information is once manipulated and it's online, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's been a couple of developments relating to that sort of thing.
All that information is going to be online, the doctor will be able to source for promoting these certain drugs. And with that, it's more fair to the public to know what those actual drugs are.
I just read yesterday where the government wants to have a rule that requires the pharmaceutical companies to disclose publicly on their websites payments to doctors, junkets that they give doctors, fees for lectures and stuff like that. That requires the pharmaceutical companies to speak. It coerces them. The government is coercing them to speak. Does that raise any First Amendment qualms? Yeah. The government is telling an individual, in this case a company, that they must speak. The government better have a pretty good justification for that. Well, as you'll see when you look at the reader, I included an excerpt about First Amendment theory, or why we protect free speech and freedom of the press. And there are 3 rationales that traditionally support freedom of speech in the press. One is the search for knowledge and truth that comes from being exposed to a multiplicity of views in the marketplace of ideas. And that's helpful in many circumstances, but it certainly does not explain some of the court's First Amendment decisions. And then secondly, related to things of the kind that have been said here, free speech promotes our ability to be self-governing in a democracy to have an informed citizenry exposed to all kinds of views, and they can then vote, curb the abuses of government, and so on. And the third traditional rationale is that free speech promotes individual autonomy and self-expression. It's good for us as individuals to be able to express ourselves, regardless of whether the speech is political and of interest to anybody else. But art, music, different ways of expressing ourselves ought to be protected in the interest of promoting individual autonomy. And then there's some negative reasons for why we protect free speech, and principal among them, from my perspective, is that we simply don't trust government and shouldn't trust government to make these distinctions for us, to decide what is acceptable to say, what is an acceptable opinion, and what isn't. The government has proven again and again to be a clumsy and incompetent censor. That government censorship gets it wrong most of the time, or enough of the time, so that it shouldn't be tolerated. So look at the First Amendment theory and keep that with you as we progress through the course to see which of these theories animates the court in coming out the way it did. And I think you'll find that in many cases it'll be more than one, or all of the above, animate the court. Let's plunge ahead and consider the features of our legal system. We'll do this, finish this up on Thursday, and then next Tuesday we'll consider Morris versus Frederick, which is the Von Hitz for Jesus case, about the rights of high school students to free speech. And that'll be our first consideration of the case. But before we get there, let's get down some of the basics about our legal system and the features of it that affect the extent to which we enjoy freedom of speech and the press. I used to say in this course that we have the freest speech and press in the world. And I regret to say that that's no longer true. That in the rankings of free speech and the press around the world, conducted by organizations like Freedom House or Reporters Without Borders, we rank well down the list. I think tied for 18th or something like that, well behind countries like Estonia and Lithuania and so on. And the Scandinavian countries, all of them, they switch off between Iceland and Finland at the very top, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, rank right up at the top. And it's a little unsettling to learn that we don't have the freest speech in the world, although in three respects in particular, we are freer than any of those countries, and we'll cover those when the time comes. I remember hearing a speech 20 years or so ago when the Soviet Union was breaking up and falling apart, and there was a Soviet journalist by the name of Vladimir Posner who spoke English like an American, and he gave a speech in which he claimed that the press in the Soviet Union was freer than the press in the United States. And he was probably right at that time because of two things. The government during Glasnost's period, the breakup of the Soviet Union, was not functioning. The government was not in the game, so the press was left alone to decide what to publish. And second, they had not yet privatized their media, so that there were no commercial sponsors, as we have in the United States, to censor what they would sponsor, and the police what they would censor. So at that moment in time, the press probably was freer, at least in some respects, in the Soviet Union than it was here. That window has been closed, clearly not true under the Putin administration anymore. But these features of our system, maybe not unique to the United States, but they are basic to an understanding of what happened to my picture. Yeah, the first one is that we have a written constitution that has explicit protection for the press. England, where we got our law from, where we used to be colonies of, does not have a written constitution. Seems very peculiar. It doesn't have a written constitution. We do, and of course all the new countries around the world do. And our constitution says that Congress shall make no law, ... Congress shall make no law. No law. And then there's an ellipse, abridging the freedom of speech of the press. The freedom of, that might be an important word, actually.